Clang! Longsword and greatsword connect as Arvio and the stranger exchange blow for blow. Keeping his guard up, Arvio tries to study the attack patterns of his opponent. Unfortunately, the red dragon mask worn by the attacker made it impossible for Arvio to read his facial expressions. To use a greatsword efficiently, one must possess a great deal of strength, and the common strategy was to use heavy swings in order to break through an opponent's guard. Once the strike of a greatsword connects, a good swordsman can make sure that it is a fatal blow. Arvio jumps backwards through the air to create a little distance from his enemy. While it was true that the man seemed to be much stronger than he was, Arvio was much quicker and lighter on his feet. The man lunges forward with a wild strike from his greatsword, but Arvio manages to sidestep his swing with skillful footwork. Arvio attempts a quick riposte in a stabbing motion from the side, but his adversary swings his greatsword around again and knocks Arvio's longsword aside, sending it flying. The longsword hits the side of a tree about a dozen feet away, effectively disarming Arvio. A sense of dread fills Arvio as he realizes that he had just made a grave mistake. He had thought that he had a clear window of attack right after the assassin's lunge, but it appears that the man was ready for such a maneuver. His attacker must be highly trained, for no simple soldier could have deprived him of the sword so easily. During the brief clash, he couldn't help but notice the similarities between the techniques the man had used compared to his own. But he did not have time to think much on the subject. Arvio backs away slowly, stealing his nerves again. He had a couple more tricks up his sleeve. Taking advantage of Arvio's apparent weakness, the stranger quickly advances forward with confidence. Arvio continues to retreat, holding his hands up in a seemingly helpless gesture. He pretends to stumble as he trips on something while walking backwards. He falls to the ground, greatly overplaying the injury he had suffered earlier on his leg. His left arm was raised above his body in what appeared to be a futile effort to protect himself. However, the assailant continues to stride forward towards Arvio in a grim but determined manner, without speaking a word. As the stranger approaches, a hook bound to a chain latches onto his right shoulder, and another hook hitches onto his injured left shoulder just a moment thereafter. It seems that Arvio, quite literally, had a few tricks up his sleeve. For as far as he knew, this fighting style was unique to him, and the stranger seemed to have no idea how to counter it. Smiling, Arvio pulls on both chains with all of his might, and propels himself into the air, dragging his assailant forwards and making him lose his balance. Arvio dexterously kicks the man on the side of the head, sending him barreling into the ground, rending parts of the man's cloak and flesh as the hooks dislodge. When the stranger tries to regain his posture, Arvio swings one of his hooks over his head in a circular motion before releasing it, allowing it to wrap itself around his enemy's greatsword. Yanking the chain back, the greatsword flies out of his adversary's hands and impales itself on the large trunk of an oak. Triumphant, Arvio was about to continue his onslaught when he felt a sharp pain in his gut. Looking down at his midsection, a wicked dagger had penetrated Arvio's breastplate just under his cloak. His assailant had thrown the nasty dirk from a hidden scabbard on his ankle. His arms felt weak, and his vision blurs as he can barely make out the man approaching him. No, Arvio thinks as he realizes that the dagger was coated with a poison or heavy sedative, and maybe both. This can't be how he dies, but things were looking grim for Arvio. He could probably stop the flow of the poison through his veins with his antitoxins, but then he would just be killed by the man regardless. Death by the hand of his enemy, or death by poison. A powerful punch strikes Arvio's ribs, sending him back into a tree. The pain clears Arvio's senses and vision momentarily. Arvio rushes forward and punches the man's injured left shoulder. He follows up the attack by gripping the stranger's cloak tightly and with the remainder of his strength sending his forehead flying into his attacker's face. As the man falls backwards, Arvio loses his footing as well, as the agonizing pain in his stomach was becoming unbearable. But at the very least, he bought himself some time, albeit not from the poison. He was struggling to breathe, and he needed to counteract the cruel venom flowing through his veins. With his clouded vision, he struggled to find the smoke potion on his belt before smashing it into the ground. While the smoke is released, he fruitlessly attempts to stand up, but it seems as if his legs have given out on him. He crawls, desperately trying to find cover from where he could recover. It only took a few seconds for Arvio to realize that his efforts were in vain. He was not getting anywhere in this condition. His thoughts turned to his duty. He must warn Master Kharid and the rest of Cormia. Alas, even moving his arms felt an impossible task at this point. Blood from a huge gash trickles from his forehead into the corners of his mouth due to him headbutting the assailant's metal mask. With incredible will and determination, he taps the glass on his wrist twice before a foot crushes his hand. The assailant crouches down, and Arvio could make out that part of the dragon mask cracked during the tussle, and he could finally see part of his attacker's face. He looked grizzled and old enough to be Arvio's father. With his dying breath, Arvio gasps out the one question that lingered in his mind. Who are you? The man doesn't respond at first, but he gets closer to Arvio as he pushes the dagger that was stuck in Arvio's ribs straight into his heart. Death. This concludes the series, Death of a Shadow. The Cormyrean Preservation Society thanks you for listening, and I, Hussam al-Din, personally extend my gratitude for listening to me recount the full tale. I hope you enjoyed my retelling, and please tune in next time for future content.